Alright, so welcome to Drawing in the Dark with Levi Smith, a Jade Monkey production. My name is Levi Smith, and for this whole deal here, I'm just gonna draw a thing. Lately, I've been working on some skull pieces to finish out a coloring book that I'm working on called All Skulls. So we're going to continue on with that until I finish out all these skull drawings I need for my coloring book. So without further ado, we are going to work on this piece here today. What I do is I do a rough little SketchUp of a concept. I do a number of them. I find something that I like. I blow it up here like this. And then for these videos, I'm basically just going to be finishing what I started here with this. Basically actually going into the drawing phase of the piece, where this right here is more of a conceptual phase. As you can see, there isn't a lot of things that have been like fleshed out. I did get a little carried away with here with the center skull piece. Excuse me. But you know, it's not really, it's still not at a really like kind of like finalized stage. And there's a couple of things I want to do with this piece that we're just going to do along here in the video as well. Let me drink a coffee there. Probably going to need a few drinks of that as we go. But yeah, so this is what I've got. I'm dropping the opacity and stuff. That way, my new line work and stuff is going to stand out and be dominant. We don't really need to see a whole lot of this. It's more like a compositional solution. And then with where we're at now is an actual, like, well, we're going to be drawing things out. Now, I actually did try to record drawing this particular piece up before, and it didn't work out. So I'm kind of redoing it now. But with this skeleton in the middle, I kind of realized that I didn't like him just being a skeleton, and so I wanted to put something on him. I went through a couple of different ideas, and excuse me, I really just want to jump right into this idea. So one of the things, just getting in here to get started. Now, it's always easier to have something like a rough, loose sketch ready and waiting for you, so that when you do just sit down to start working on something, you're not going in so cold. We already have something here that we can work with, and it does make life a lot easier in that way. Now, one of the things I was originally thinking about with this piece was that he's kind of boring just as a skeleton sitting here. And so the thing that I had kind of worked out before, and so I'm just going to get straight to it here, is it's kind of like a skeleton knight, like a Templar knight kind of thing. Wearing remnants of his armor still, and still, we can give him his his sword here. And all of this can be way, way more interesting and tell something of a kind of story. I think, though, I'm going to keep his hands kind of loose, like over time, being dead, he doesn't really have any grip, and his hands have just kind of like shifted off the handle of the sword a bit. But I do want to show, that he's decayed. We've just got some bones poking out of where these bits of armor are. I want these the gauntlets, the armor that we're going to put on him. I want it to kind of like sag off his bones a little bit, so this top edge is going to come right in where these bones would come through. And we have this little space underneath here that we can see. And so that kind of shows, like, man, that kind of shows how he, how his armor actually is laying on him with some gravity. Gives us a little bit of like weight to the piece, which is one of those things that, like we instinctively key into. We don't even quite realize it. So I'm gonna, and this phase, I mean, none of this is final lines. A lot of what I'm doing is I'm working out ideas. So sometimes my line work here will get really scribbly, especially if, say, like in this, I'm just trying to kind of like move through and get a look, and I don't even want this scale armor to be perfect. I want it to be kind of like rusted and falling away and stuff. We're just going to do portions of it. Too random there. We want things to still kind of seem close to his body so that he does still feel skeletal as well. We'll hang some of this scale mail, I guess, off here to kind of show that he had sleeves. We can just add in the suggestion of some stuff here. Now, for these hands right now, I'm not going to look up any reference particularly right now for these hands. I'm just going to kind of work off of memory with this. Man, as far as this detail, and what I'll do is I'll do it like this first, and then what I'll do is I'll go back and look at some reference to kind of correct and check my work from here. That way my reference isn't making my choices, but is more of like a tool of correction for what I want to try to do. So if you get too dependent on your references, then they start making your choices for you. They start deciding, your composition and stuff. If you're looking at a piece while you're doing your initial SketchUps and stuff, especially this kind of stuff. Now, I did look at a number of pieces that inspired this piece in particular, this composition. But what I did is I looked at a bunch of different artworks, a bunch of different like body forms and stuff. And this is actually even kind of like a Buddhist kind of piece that I ended up being inspired from with this. So I'll take that kind of concept and I'll put all that away, and then I'll sketch something like this, and then from here I'll then, if I like how that SketchUp worked, the conceptual, then I'll go in and we'll go to this stage, working things up. Damn. Hold on, I need another drink. There we go. So, yeah, so I don't want my reference to make my decisions. I want to have that on my own. And with this stage, I'm still trying to work off of my memory. And then from here, I'll go in and have these things kind of checked by my reference. And I'll look at different references for different things. So I'm not going to go back to the original idea that inspired this composition. What I'll do when I check my work is I'll pull up a bunch of anatomy references I have, say like with these hands and stuff. I'll look up some skeletal hands, and then I'll come in here and I'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, this is how I want, I need to make this finger look, even though it may not look exactly like that in my reference. I don't want the reference to tell me where I want the finger to go. And I might look at like other hand reference or hand poses and stuff to help make sense if I just don't like where these fingers are working and stuff. So I'll use different pieces of references to solve and inform different aspects of what I'm trying to do. But again, and it can't be overstated, don't let your reference make your decisions for you. So I'm just going to go in here, get a good concept there, of the boniness of the hands, and that is something that's going to have to show a good amount of accuracy there, because they are, particularly upfront element. Now in through here, I still want to show this, some open bony rib cage. So I will come in here. And again, you can see these under sketch lines where they're definitely informing where I'm choosing to put some of these lines, but I'm not dependent on them. I'm not glued to them. I don't have to follow them. I'm going through this process of kind of solving these little visual problems, puzzles, challenges in the piece, and then moving on, but allowing myself to be loose enough in this part of the process to keep things moving, keep things spontaneous. I'm not going back and forth real heavily looking at reference. Sometimes I will do that at this stage, but I do want, because I can go back in here and I can fiddle more with this the scale mail and stuff, maybe do a little bit of correcting here and there. By the time I'm done with this stage, though, the goal really is to know, what's going on in every aspect and element of the piece. I need to know where things are, where things aren't. I need to understand what I'm trying to convey. I need, all the details need to be worked out and stuff, because the stage after this is the stage of inking, of doing the final rendering, deciding what actually all the final lines are going to be. And in that stage, I don't want to be solving the problem of the hand position at that time. I want that all solved. I want the anatomy solved, lighting decisions and stuff. I want all of that to be understood. That way, when I do go into that final line work, that can all inform me, and I'm not spending any time being sketchy, searching for solutions, trying to make sense of what I noodled out. Because there's definitely not enough information, say like with this right here, to ink anything. There's so little information there that that the one next to it, this guy here, has got even way more information, and maybe somebody could go in there and ink it from there. But that's still not enough for me as far as this development process. Because this is where I actually get to be the most creative with the piece. When I'm actually drawing, as it were, versus inking, rendering, sketching. This is where I'm being the most free in the process. And so with right here, with this guy's skull, actually, so the skull proportion here, to the body is too big. But at the same time, and especially in superhero art and stuff, tend to make, the head a little bit bigger, makes them a little bit more youthful, or tend to make the head a bit smaller. Sometimes that makes, the body, bigger, and it can make somebody seem more powerful. If you have, and I'm just going to doodle something right here, if you have a body form like this with this smaller head, and you've got these big old arms here, well then of course he's going to look more buffed out versus someone that's got a huge head and a tiny body. Well, this person is, even though this might be something of a heroic pose, obviously this is more this is more of a kid, and this is more of a brutish kind of muscly person. So and so head size can really really have a huge impact on something like that. But yeah, so I'm going to shrink the head here from what we have, and already I think that feels better. It's too high though, so this neck is too much as well. And I think I'm just gonna erase the neck from here. I'm gonna select this new head size. I'm gonna bring it down. Look at that. I like that. And now I'm going to duplicate that's not what I did. I'm going to duplicate my under sketch layer. I'm going to drop one of them. So now that original one I've turned off. I'm actually just going to save that because who knows, for whatever reason I might want to go back to that. But on the new one, I'm just going to erase out that other skull so that it's not influencing me, controlling me too much as far as the decisions that I'm going to make here. Let's go back up to this layer. And then I'm going to come back into here, make a couple of adjustments here with this neck. That seems a little bit more reasonable for how much neck we're actually going to do. And we're just going to bring in these lines here so we can put our eye sockets generally in the middle. Do a little skull here. You know, do the cheekbones. There's some interesting tricks, you know, as far as like drawing skulls and stuff. You know, I mean, it can be, you know, just a really simple like mechanical process right here. You can get a little more straightforward into it. Do some stuff that's more like these guys, and as you can see, like these two guys are mirrored. For when I originally drew this sketch, I drew basically the center and then half of it, and then flipped the half over to the other side. You know, so we can do this in here like this, and just follow a basic skull formula here. And there's, you know, the ice cream cone method is one of the easiest methods to draw a skull, because then with the ice cream cone we can add, and it tells us where these elements go, and it'll even tell you as far as something like this. It's not, you know, I guess it's might be a bit of a half-assed Loomis method, but it tends to work, you know, and usually a lot of these kinds of methods and stuff, you know, as you learn them and as you become more attuned to them and used to using them and stuff, they do evolve, and you start using them in your own ways, you know, simplified shortcuts, stuff like that. You know, I always thought that it was really cool. Somebody had once said that our style is actually our flaws, our imperfections in the pursuit of perfection. So, you know, trying to draw a perfect skull, my style that emerges is actually the errors that I make in going for trying to draw a perfect skull. And so, because the more perfect the skull could be rendered, honestly, the more invisible the artist will seem. You know, perfect atomical renderings and stuff. People aren't often like, "Oh man, I really like that. I wonder who drew that." You can definitely appreciate it for its perfection, but it seems kind of stale to a point with its perfection, where the natural imperfection, the shortcomings of your own style, your own approach, your own methodologies and stuff, will kind of speak in their own way a bit more, and be the very interesting, recognizable part of your work that people are interested in. And so, you know, and through exposure of different styles that you like, different methods, you know, any physical limitations you may have and stuff, you know, all of that stuff will play in, you know, and it's not it's not bad. What it does is it adds to your voice, it adds to your style, you know, and so it's not something that's necessarily, and I've seen people like really deliberately try to shape their style to mimic, say, another artist, you know, and so, but that doesn't speak of you as much as it speaks of them, you know. But that could be something that's important on the process to finding and developing your own style. But in a way, kind of like your voice, I don't think it's necessarily something that for most of us you get to choose. I mean, you can manipulate it, you can shape it, you can modify it. You know, people alter their voices all the time for accents and stuff like that, and acting and whatnot. So it's not that it can't be done, not that it, you know, and I'm not saying that it shouldn't be done. But there is a authenticity to your natural voice that, in the same way to a natural artistic style, that I think is one of the things that makes art so interesting and unique. But yeah, so I'm liking how this guy's kind of put together here with the skull, but I don't want just the skull on him. So I think we're going to draw in like a hood, similar to the kind of hoods that knights would wear over their head under their armor, that would, you know, protect their head from the helmet. They would protect, you know, their neck and stuff like that, you know, but also maintain movability and stuff. So we can even just kind of suggest in here with these little squiggles, these will tell me that I want this to have a little bit of suggestion of texture and of the scale. We'll just stick to the scale, we'll keep that consistent through this guy. He's going to have a matching set of armor, I suppose. You know, we'll put in a little bit of shadowing and stuff this way. I think that all just generally makes him seem way more interesting. We can get a little creative here with, say, like the pommel of this sword. And I often, like in this kind of phase, I often try not to do a lot of erasing. I try to keep things, you know, I'll just draw right over the top of whatever I've drawn. Part of it is I'm trying to also preserve information, because I might make a decision that then I don't necessarily like, but I don't know why. I don't know if it's bad. Maybe you know, it's out of context in a certain way, and then as the piece evolves, I will and, you know, then it'll make more sense to me. I'll be like, oh, there's a, you know, that's a good solution. You know, I'm going to go back to that other solution because it works with what I've decided to do after that at this point. I'm going to do all this, you know, shading, these little light decisions and stuff that'll kind of help me understand and see better my spaces, my overlappings, which parts of these ribs are there and not there. So we'll show that. We can even give, yeah, a little bit here that's a little dark. Kind of give us a little bit of boundary, some edges on these sides, and then here for his pelvis area, we can give him some kind of like big old buckle, like a segmented kind of belt kind of thing here. So let's see, I'll play with this little idea, and if I don't like it, you know, I'll back out of it, or I'll redraw directly on it. Do some, I need a little bit more space. I'm going to do some backup steps there. Give this a little bit more space for like these thigh guards, which would be, you know, more of like a plate kind of style of the armor. And then underneath would be more of the scale. You know, luckily we don't need to do too much work with the crotch in this area. You know, that can always be a bit of an awkward area to work. Sometimes it's just an easier shortcut to obscure awkward areas like that. Let's see here, and you know, and by awkward I mean, you know, awkward to draw. You know, you can get a little too lumpy in there. You can get, you know, and it's an area that the eye will often draw to as they cross over a piece. And if things are simple, nondescript, don't draw a lot of attention to itself, then the eye passes right over it. But if things are a little weird, a little off, some areas of a piece, that can be forgiven. Other areas, it just seems to just become the piece in itself. So to avoid those kinds of interpretations, it can be easier just to generalize and simplify an area so that it doesn't draw a lot of attention to itself. So I think right here we have this whole like waist area, and this would be spinal column, and there'd be organs, and there'd be even more ribs. We could even get another rib in there. That's okay. Just fill in these gaps. Hands here to show more of the separated bone structures. But then through here, I'm just going to shade this in. I'm just going to make this kind of a background fill element, so it feels like his torso, his torso is connecting to his pelvis, but it still seems a little close to the spine. It's skeletal. One of the things that I'm seeing right here that I need to change is where this part of the sword, that base part of the sword, I'm not sure what it, what it's particularly called, before it transitions into the blade, is connecting. I'm just going to do a little red line here real quick. So this line here of this piece is connecting to these lines that are of the belt buckle, which all kind of merges it all together into a shape. So I'm losing my overlapping kind of qualities in this. And so with something like that, that's called a tangent, and they drive me nuts. And so the choice is to either with this, because this one's the easier one to modify, is we either go lower like that or higher up like this. And I think higher up like that's going to work better. So we'll erase this part here again, and then we can see more that feels like it's more connected to the sword now versus the belt and the sword kind of merging into that way right there, like that. That has its own separation. And so when you have like when lines line up like that in that kind of tangent, it can really confuse different parts of the drawing. It can make it a little bit harder to read, and can just be seen as sloppy or poorly constructed. Because this is, I mean, I guess in some ways, there's a bit of sloppiness to this right now, but that's a feature of the process, not necessarily a bug. That sloppiness will give you a lot of freedom into exploring your piece, being experimental, not being afraid to do something in the piece that may not work. We have another tangent right here. I'm going to bring it like that. This little kind of double line right here will like represent like an engraving kind of thing. I'm going to draw just a center line here. And that center line will work as a basis for this little pattern here. So that'll be, like the face, it's not like the kind of line that that you'll keep in the piece, but it is something that'll help you see and understand a center here. Yeah, so these lines, they don't line up. That's fine. I'm going to follow this as the center line. I'm just going to do the same on the fly kind of piece here. How's it going like this? So, you know, as I'm doing this, I'm looking at the other one that I drew, looking at the opposite side. You know, the second half is always trickier than the first half because, you know, one of them has to match the other. The first one is just, you know, whatever you come up with. So that's cool. I'll do that. We're going to put little noses in there because then, bam, they're skulls. Yeah, and so one of the things also is that, you know, line thicknesses and overlapping. I want this hand to stand out more on its own, on top of things, and separated so it's easier to see. Same thing with this hand. So these line thicknesses have to be just generally thicker than the stuff around them. That'll separate and pop that stuff out. Put in a little bit of shading on this. Our general lighting here is kind of coming from the above and outside. So if you could think of our light sources are here. So they're going to hit here and here, which means that this will shadow off like this. And that gives us a nice general but typical kind of lighting scheme. It's not too dramatic. You know, it's not really like, say, trying to evoke something particularly scary, but almost even more of like a museum lighting, you know, as a concept for that sort of thing. So yeah, so we're gonna go with that. I don't know if that's going to be the lighting scheme for the rest of this piece, but it's definitely the lighting for Bob here, the skeleton. Bob the Knight. So we're going to do just a bit more kind of shading here. We know we're running into this first ring. And yeah, so he's in good shape now. I do like where he's going with this so far. So what I'm gonna do is, this is gonna be part one. Part two, I'll start working on another element. Maybe, you know, this stuff down here, maybe this section right here. But I will do these as individual sections like this. This one I'll duplicate over to this side, and then I won't do necessarily that duplicating when I'm doing the final line work and stuff. But for the purposes of like symmetry and stuff like that, I'll draw this one side and then copy it to the other. But for the bottom down here, I won't necessarily do that. I did. You know, for the sketching, like this guy's the same as this guy over here. But what I'll do with this is I'll make sure that all of these guys, you know, are going to be kind of ultimately unique. You know, I don't want necessarily like this guy right here to be, you know, the same exactly as this guy right here. You know, so we will play with that. But yeah, so this is where we're going to leave things off this time around, which is not too bad. You know, we got that skeleton worked up in a nice and interesting way. I think I really like him. I think this is going to work out well. So thanks for watching. Thanks for stopping by with me here. I'm Levi Smith. This is Drawing in the Dark, a Jade Monkey production. And yeah, check us out on jademonkey.net. Check out our Patreon on patreon.com/mopandbucket. And all the things, like and subscribe. You know what to do. All right. Catch you guys next time. Later.